the next speaker. I hope she's still, oh, she's still here. Debbie Bacigalupi. I've been told that she's an amazing presenter who rocks the room with expertise in delivery, and that she's an Agenda 21. Let's find out what Debbie has for us today.
Good afternoon. How is everyone?
Awesome.
I drove something like 600 miles, right, to be here because I love this country. And I had the opportunity to meet many of you the last time, and I came here to learn, because what's happening in our neck of the woods in Northern California, I actually live in San Francisco Bay Area, and but my parents are cattle ranchers in Siskiyou County. You've probably heard about the Klamath River dams, largest dam removal project in worldwide history. But it's a very similar issue, so that's why I came up to Montana a couple of weeks ago to hear Larry speak, because like you, we're looking for solutions. And I do need meetings like this. Because it's meetings like this that if I didn't have, what I would call sensible people who are doing their research to talk to, I think I would be going crazy. So anyway, I loved what Andy was talking about. It's perfect, and I'm so glad to hear his story, because that is happening in Siskiyou County. They will not stop, is the answer to that, until they have, and I don't even think when they have their agenda completed, I don't think they're going to stop, because it's never far enough for people who have, for over 40 years, way over 40 years, been trying to push this agenda. So in less than 40 minutes, I'm going to go through 40 plus years of history that brings us to where we are. So, and I guarantee you I will run out of time. Right now, I think we're all here because we see the threat of liberty and freedom. And when we no longer have liberty, and we no longer have freedom, what are we left with? What is anyone left with? I don't care if you're Indian, I don't care if you're Chinese, I don't care if you live in America, I don't care, because when you lose those things, what else do we have? I'm sorry to be a little bit impassioned. I'm actually running off of some fumes about a group, I want to call them IRHR, but last night when I was just unwinding from a long drive, I happened to find an article about me. Why are they so threatened by people like us? What are they hiding, and what do they have to lose? So, this group IRON, you can see poor Elaine right here, all over their website. There's news stories, by the way.
They're my press agent.
You're what?
They're my press agent.
but like Elaine told me, oh my gosh, this is great because we're going to get more publicity. And I'm like, wait, I don't like being attacked like this, especially when it's not true. But I decided to show you a little bit of the article. And I'm so glad conspiracy has been brought up so many times today. The global conspiracies are getting together in Kalispell. We are anti-Indian style. This conference also includes a well-known California-based conspiracy theorist, that's me, Debbie Bacigalupi, a failed candidate for U.S. Congress in the year 2012. Bacigalupi travels to the far-right circuits, preaching Agenda 21, conspiracy theory. So you want to talk about that conspiracy theory? Okay. Well, first of all, I was really upset with these people, and of course they go on to name Larry and Elaine, and even Clarice is named in this article. But, so as they call us conspiracy theorists, I love that. I love to wear that hat. First of all, it's not a theory when you start injecting some fact. But I decided to do some investigation on my own because that's what I do. I investigate. And I decided to look into this group. They are, you can see IRHR, they are a long-held dream, so their goals are the long-held dreams for social and economic justice. So if you know about United Nations Agenda 21, you already hear some key terms. Well, then they go on to say the overwhelming majority of white people, remember this is a human rights group, the overwhelming majority of white people continue to take for granted the relative privileges accruing from the color of their skin. Is that disgusting or what? That to me is bigotry, or they are hypocrites. This to me is hate speak or hate speech. They go on to say racism plagues the individual and collective lives of this continent's original people, and they're talking about the Indians, right? Well, I did a little research on this guy named Leonard Zeskind. And there is a great website that you can go to, and it's called Wayback Machine. So Leonard Zeskind, I didn't mean to do that the second time. Leonard Zeskind works for the Center for Democratic Renewal, or he used to. He's now with that IRHR, Angry HR. So you can see they're linked to the National Anti-Klan Network. So I decided to do a little bit more research. Now on Wayback Machine, it's a fabulous website. I invite you guys to look into Wayback Machine, because Wayback Machine, you can go way back into history to find original documents. So anyway, I decided to look for Center for Democratic Renewal, and I see this public eye org. Well, lo and behold, IRHR, there's no way you can contact the group. In fact, when I put in IRHR and Wayback Machine, nothing appears. But I can put in President Council on Sustainable Development in the Wayback Machine, and I can get tons of documents way back from the 1980s and 90s, or 1990s rather. But I can't find anything on IRHR. But I found this Leonard guy and Center for Democratic Renewal and Public Eye. Well, okay, so if I use Wayback Machine, you see this line up here. This is January 1998. This is a capture of Center for Democratic Renewal's website on this date way over here on January 18, 1998. So I look a little bit further. There, of course, is Public Eye Web, and I look over here and there's Institute for Global Communications. Now I can click on those links. And what do I go to? Look, here's another. This is, I don't remember the month, but you can see it's the second day in 1999 somewhere. And look at here. Hello. I'm going to use my Common Core thoughts and wisdom. Man, oh man, look at this. Okay, so IGC, we already linked IGC with this gentleman. And then look over here, it says IGC is a global partnership, computer networks, blah, blah, blah. And who are they funded by? The Tides Foundation.
Oh.
The Tides Center. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, you know what? I am so worried about all this name calling for no reason. Because these people are heavily involved with the United Nations. So why do they need to call us names and need to call us conspiracy theorists? Because we could possibly block their dreams for social equity and economic justice and environmental justice, just as the United Nations Agenda 21 goals are. So you can see since 1992, isn't that interesting? Because when was the first Rio Earth Summit? 1992. So anyway, I am now relieved. I know who these people are, and they will keep coming after us until their goals are implemented. Those are some pretty important details. And it's some big details that we have so missed for if we were just listening to Clarice Ryan over 20 years ago, we might have been able to turn around United Nations Agenda 21, but it is heavily in this country. In fact, it is it's like a cancer now. So how easy is it to miss details? Well, do this little practice for you. It's after lunch, so if you can help me read this sentence out loud. A bird
In the bush.
I heard a bird in the bush. Who said a bird in the bush? Be proud.
Yeah.
Because once you see the second "the," you can never unsee that detail.
Oh.
How about Amazon.com? Amazon.com is in the business of delivering anything, anywhere. They are happy to deliver anything from A to Z. So what's in their logo that once you see it, you will never unsee this detail? A to Z, you see the arrow and you see the happy face. And then there's one more that I just have to share, and that's FedEx, because as soon as we leave today, you're going to see a FedEx truck. How many know that, remember when it used to be Federal Express?
Yeah.
And now it's FedEx. Well, when Fred Smith, who was the CEO, I think he wanted a symbol, a detail in FedEx that represents what FedEx does in the world. So what does FedEx do? How many know the detail of this, by the way? Anybody know the detail? Oh, this is wonderful. Okay. I think you're the first room that I've spoken to where there is not one person who knows the detail. So this is very exciting for me. FedEx is in the business of forwarding things, right?
Right.
You see that arrow.
Oh.
You can never, ever unsee that detail, even when it's not highlighted. FedEx, they say, this, whether or not this is true, also delivers things, forwards things in a timely manner. So some people suggest that there's a measuring spoon in the logo to represent a measurement. But it doesn't matter if that truly was what they had planned for this logo and this detail. The point is, no matter what, the next time you see a FedEx truck, you can never, ever unsee those details. This is my suggestion for United Nations Agenda 21. There's absolutely zero reason why everyone in this room should not be proud to talk about the facts, the truth, the details of this plan that would usurp our freedom, that would steal our freedom and liberty away. This is not just a plan for the United States of America, as you all well know. How many know about United Nations Agenda 21? How many do not know? A couple people do not know about United Nations Agenda 21. I'm so glad you're here. This is why we are being called conspiracy theorists, because globalists like Ted Turner, who funds heavily the United Nations Foundation. Who is the largest landowner in the United States of America?
Ted Turner.
Who owns CNN?
Ted Turner.
Turner Network? Cartoon Network?
Mm.
Ted Turner. And if you look at some details on this Ted Turner picture, by the way, one of the things I do not do this for, I do not get paid. I pay my own way around the Western United States to do this. The wear and tear on my car, the hotels, everything. I ran for Congress. That was about the end of my money in 2012. And I used to work for Google, so I, had as an independent contractor. So, at one point I did have a little bit of cash, but, freedom is not free is what they say, right? So anyway, one of the ways I fund myself, and my cards are back there, is I work with the doctors who created Proactive. They have an at-home business where people, women like me, men, are making six-figure monthly incomes with these doctors, so that is my goal. So anyway, if you want to help me, you can look into that business and join me, and we could have a really fun time. But anyway, okay, so I'm at a Rodan and Fields conference last year, and when I was walking around the city of Atlanta, which is where Ted Turner lives, I happened to see Captain Planet. That's his cartoon to save the world. And I walk into this building. Right next to this building is Montana Grill. Oh, you all know about Ted Turner. I'm usually not speaking in Montana. So you all know about Ted Turner's Montana Grill. Well, right next to, right inside the lobby, next to the lobby, was Ted Turner's Montana Grill. And I even grabbed the menu for the children, which, oh, it's right here, which talks about recycling, water conservation, energy conservation, and then bison facts. Of course, bison facts, right? But I have to tell you, when I took this picture with my cell phone, I was fine. The guard was not saying anything to me. She didn't care I was in there until I snapped with my cell phone and she heard it go. This picture was huge, by the way, and it was gold. And in this darkish lobby, the gold was just shiny, and it was just mesmerizing. So I took the picture, and as soon as I snapped the picture, she started screaming at me. I have the video on my cell phone. She started screaming at me, and eventually she tried to call the cops on me for taking this picture. What do they have to hide? So if you look at this picture, there's some details that are extraordinary. Has anybody picked out some details so far?
Oh, yeah.
Like what?
The seeing eye.
Okay, let's go through this real quick.
The halo.
Here's the United States flag, yes?
Yeah.
What is covering the United States flag? What is covering the sovereign states? United
UN.
Nations flag. And where is that United Nations flag? It's in his eye, isn't it? The apple of his eye, maybe? You go down the poles, right? There's two in the palm of his hand. But let's not go there yet. Let's go up into the sky. He looks godlike, doesn't he? What's this right here? And down here?
South America. Oh,
And look at his sleeve here. So here he looks either presidential or military, doesn't he? Something's burning back here. You see his head right here. You see his head right here. Those are not sun rays, by the way, people. And then you see this right here.
oh, the eagle.
A falcon, maybe an eagle. But let's go down here. And then, you know, Ted loves to sail. It's in his chest, so it's in his heart, right? The sailboat, but it also looks like a tie. Let's look at his hand. Doesn't his thumb look weird? What's that thumb? It's a bison.
Oh, my.
This is with my cell phone, so the details are hard to see. By the way, no one, Rosa Koire, for those of you who know Rosa Koire, she has a great website called Democrats Against UN Agenda 21. She's a hero of mine, and she happens to be lesbian, so, you know, I or HR if they want to call me a racist, right? But anyway, if you look down here, Ted is a bison rancher, yes? Ted thinks cattle are destroying the planet. I'm a cattle rancher's daughter. So this makes me a little bit upset. But look at Ted Turner's fingerprints, or his fingers. We know, you know, because you've been battling wolves, that Ted has been funding wolf protection, right? So his fingertips. We haven't even discovered what else is in this picture, but there are some pretty extraordinary details that show where the biggest, wealthiest people, how they think and how they feel. And that should be a sign of where the people who have the money, who control the money, who are controlling the future, what they have in mind for us. Well, I am called a conspiracy theorist, right? So I want to have fun, and this is my recent post for me on Facebook. So I put a tinfoil hat on my head, and I put Nancy Pelosi in my computer. By the way, I was at a fair for Rhode Island Field. So anyway, nothing to do with Nancy Pelosi, but I think, you know what? If they're going to call us names, we might as well have fun with this, right? And then I also put in this picture, H. Conres 353. How many have heard of H. Conres 353? Well, let's just hear from our politicians themselves what H. Conres 353 is. By the way, this video is from 1992. Imagine, it's a Friday night. Congress, 9:12 p.m. What were you doing? Probably on a Friday night? Years ago? When we didn't have a country, so we thought, to save? You probably were not paying attention to the details of Congress, but I'll just let them tell you in their own words what they were up to.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Concurrent Resolution 353, concurrent resolution expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit by developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H. Conres 353, expressing the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the sponsor, to explain the resolution.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. In fact, it is a very simple resolution, which the gentleman has just mostly explained. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. HCON Res 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman for admission.
How many have seen that video? Is that fact right there? When you're called a conspiracy theorist and people want to say, oh, Agenda 21 isn't a real thing, don't you think that's a very good thing to show people?
Yeah.
It's excellent.
Evidence.
Evidence, exactly right. So, when I was running for Congress in 2012, I decided I needed more evidence. You know, I'm like you. I like to gather the facts. I like to see firsthand this global warming, destruction, climate change that is pushing United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. So when I was running for Congress, I saved up some money and I went to the Rio Earth Summit, Rio Plus 20, the 20-year anniversary of the first Rio Earth Summit, which was where they first promulgated United Nations Agenda 21 and announced it to the world. It was called the Rio Plus 20 United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, and they called it the Future We Want. And as an attendee, I can tell you that it did not have anything to do with the environment, because and as a corporate event planner for Google, I can tell you as a corporate event planner, they were bringing in subflooring, lighting, air conditioning, props, tons of food, helicopters. We had hundreds of buses sitting on idle for hours and hours and hours as 50,000 people, supposedly, went to and from their hotels. The closest hotel was an hour. My hotel was 2 hours away. It was not about saving the environment. It was about pushing an agenda. It was a stage for them to get this big, huge attention on a plan that they have been envisioning for well over 30 years. I was also accompanied by Maurice Strong, you can see there. And you can see Maurice Strong is giving us a detail in his button, Step Up Agenda 21. In other words, pick it up. Now, a lot of you know that Agenda 21 goals were by the year 2050. You probably recently heard about the 2030 plan, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, when are they agreeing on that 2030 plan? Anybody know?
This week.
Today.
Yeah.
How many knew that today, the United Nations headquarters, did you wonder why the Pope happened to be in the United States at the same time as Putin, at the same time as the President of China? Isn't that an extraordinary coincidence? It is not a coincidence. Their goals have been very, very well mapped out. Now, I'm from California, as you know, and California, you want to say that you're leading the way on the water issue, you might be. But I can tell you when it comes to cap and trade and radical environmentalism, California has you beat. And here's why. This, by the way, is from the first Rio Earth Summit. You can find all these videos online. The Dalai Lama, Shirley MacLaine, Olivia Newton-John,
Brothers and sisters, I'm extremely happy to be here.
the Beach
What we
Boys,
have to do here is to organize an
And my father.
entirely new political force to overcome the obstacles to environmental sanity.
President Bush, we need change.
California has been leading the way for a long time. What they planned for us in this century is what's called regionalism. Hitler pulled that. Regionalism is where you live in what is called mega regions, like Cascadia. You can see Cascadia overlaps into Canada. Northern California goes all the way from San Francisco, includes Santa Cruz, includes now Reno and Tahoe and the San Joaquin Valley. That is the Northern California region. Southern California region includes Mexico. You wonder why they're not doing anything about immigration? Because that's not in their plans. How do you dissolve borders? That is what regionalism is. Here's where I live. I live in the One Bay Area. The One Bay Area, our future begins today. We're one planet. We're one big happy family. We are celebrating the 40th. Did you know that Earth Day is the celebration of Marxist Lenin's birthday? Do you think it's a coincidence that they picked a radical environmentalist to celebrate Earth Day? Here's the One Bay Area plan. If you are in a priority conservation area, which is the green, this is San Jose, by the way, that area is considered, if you're in the green, it's a priority conservation area. By the way, this plan was passed. Who was it passed by? An organization that has been working tightly with the EPA. They're called ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Government. They are COG, a council of government. You have a COG here. Anybody know who your COG is? You have, somebody has to know who your COG is. There's a COG. I'm sorry I didn't look it up, but if somebody has a smartphone, right? Somebody has a smartphone and look up Kalispell, look up a COG in this area for Montana. COGs are unelected. They're self-appointed. And just like in the Bay Area, the One Bay Area plan, they are pushing these plans through of regionalism without any vote from the people. Because just like Hitler told his people, we are going to appoint good people, and they had regionalism. And eventually the votes disappear. They don't matter. Your vote doesn't matter. This is going on all around the country. There's Thrive 2055, which is in Chattanooga area. One Valley, One Vision. This is in the city of Santa Clara. This is New Mexico. This is their, New Mexico, and this is their 5 counties, One Vision, One Source. And you can see each one of them match the One Bay Area plan, where all development happens along multimodal corridors. This is what an Agenda 21 regional mega city looks like, where the parks, the green space, the open space is outside of what they call the built world. Because under sustainable development, you can even look this up on Wiki, they talk about the limits to growth. This is the Limits to Growth book. The Club of Rome published this book. In fact, the Club of Rome, mentioned in my favorite book, the United Nations Environment Program. Larry loves this book too. In this book called The Global Biodiversity Assessment, they say this: the Club of Rome report, The Limits to Growth, 1972, for example, predicted that the population growth, let me go back. The Club of Rome report, The Limits to Growth, for example, predicted that population growth, resource exhaustion, and pollution would bring about the collapse of human society by the early 21st century. If they were telling the truth, would we be sitting here right now? Because we would have seen catastrophic, based on global warming and climate change, we would have destroyed ourselves. In 1987, the United Nations Secretary Maurice Strong, who you saw pictured with me, tasked a woman named Gro Harlem Brundtland. She was the first Prime Minister of Norway. This is called the Brundtland Report, wrote Our Common Future. And in this United Nations document, they defined what sustainable development was for the 21st century. What this has to do with the tribes is, if you look at anything having to do with the tribes, you will see it has to do with sustainable development. In 1992, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development published the United Nations Earth Charter. What is the Earth Charter? We'll talk about that in just a second. But what they outlined was a just, sustainable, and peaceful global society in the 21st century. And then in 1992, the Rio Earth Summit promulgated Agenda 21. But you see sustainable development everywhere within our country now. This is the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, heavily involved with ranchers and farmers in Siskiyou County right now. And you can see that they even define sustainable development, and they quote the United Nations. So when we're talking about conspiracy theory, I think so far we have some pretty compelling facts. They even stated that this has become the international definition being used everywhere. Well, which state is the pilot program for a cap-and-trade scheme that is about to happen all over the world? California. The way California goes, so goes the
Nation.
This is Mary Nichols. She's with the California Air Resource Board. At the time that this bio was placed, she was also the co-chair for the California Biodiversity Council. This document, the Global Biodiversity Assessment, was the United Nations Convention on Biodiversity. But you can see even Mary Nichols' government quotes our common future. This is a federal registry. August 24th, 1998, Federal Registry 45157. Look it over here. The EPA has introduced such as the Brownfields Initiative, Environmental Justice Small Grants Program, Project Excel, the President's American Heritage River, Watershed Protection, Transportation Partners, the Smart Growth Network, blah, 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 Sustainable Urban. Whoa. The Sustainable Development Challenge Grant Program is also a step in implementing Agenda 21, the Global Plan of Action on Sustainable Development. Have I shown you enough facts yet? This is the Kerr Dam. And you can see on the Kerr Dam, they talk about sustainable economic development. What do you hear there? It is Agenda 21. It's not a left-right issue. This is an American freedom issue. Because in 1992, George Herbert Walker Bush, a Republican, soft-lawed United Nations Agenda 21. This is that document right here, a blueprint for a sustainable future. In 1993, President Clinton created Executive Order 12852, the President's Council on Sustainable Development. You can see it right here. In 1997, our counties and our mayors created what is Joint Center for Sustainable Communities. And then in 2001, the National Governors Association, and anybody know what the National Governors Association endorsed recently? Common Core.
Yeah.
They gave us smart growth. The President's Council, Clinton, says this: Agenda 21, in contrast, identifies the unsustainable pattern of production and consumption, particularly in industrialized countries, as a major cause of the continued deterioration of the global environment. Whose fault is it?
Ours.
But you know what? Now we have Wall Street getting involved. This is Bloomberg. And you can see what is sustainable development. It's the 3 E's. You hear about this all the time. This is why I said that the tribe, you can see all through their documents, they refer to these things, these 3 things: social equity, economic justice, and environmental justice. And right in the middle, where everything comes together at once, is what they call sustainable development. You can see products, people, planet. This is Bloomberg. So Wall Street has gotten involved. Just recently, retirement accounts or retirement funds, CalSTRS, CalPERS, has signed an MOU with the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investing, to divest from greenhouse gases. Now, you all are cattle ranchers and farmers, and you know darn well that our cattle, our livestock, have thousands of byproducts. The tires that you drove in on today, the asphalt you drove in on today, all livestock byproduct. So if they're going to divest from fossil fuels, which if someone has a pacemaker in this room, that is fossil fuel or petroleum. So if we are to divest based on climate change and global warming via a cap and trade scheme, that if you pollute, you must pay. Imagine the divestment, the supply, the demand. Who's going to be able to pay for those things? Are we going to get the things that, just like this room, which is livestock and petroleum? Our kids are being taught this too. This is Boy Scouts of America. This is their green2deepgreen.org website. The 3 E's, sustainable development in the middle. And look at this. They quote Rue Harlem Brundtland in this United Nations document. Now I called, right when I saw this, I called Boy Scouts of America and I got hung up on 3 times. And they told me, you better look at our website more closely. We do not quote the United Nations. And I called back and I said, I think you need to read your website more closely. And he hung up on me again. But, to get the Sustainability Merit Badge, by the way, which is a new badge from the Boy Scouts of America, you have to tattle on your parents, to your Boy Scout leader, what they are buying, purchasing that is unsustainable and causing environmental degradation. And Common Core is teaching this too. Look at Moody Judy, who is mad at the world because her dad is grinding coffee beans. She can't even hear herself because her dad is grinding coffee beans. You know what kind of coffee beans they are? Rainforest coffee beans. And her mom is making her a lunch using a plastic bag, and you can see, Mom, she gets all angry. Mom, what's wrong? Mom, it's a paper bag, she says. What's wrong with that? Don't you get it? Said Judy, they cut down trees to make paper bags. Trees give shade. They help control what?
Global warming.
Global warming. What did Hitler say about the youth? He who owns the youth gains the future. Common Core is education for sustainability. Now, I used to ask myself, why do we not know about United Nations Agenda 21? How come it's been going on for 20 years and I just found, or 20 more years, and I just found out about it about 10 years ago? Because they had to hide it from us in America. This is Gary Lawrence. He's a planner in the state of Washington. He was also part of President Clinton's Sustainable Development Committee. He said this about why we don't call it Agenda 21 in the United States of America. Participating in a United Nations advocated planning process would very likely bring out many who would actively work to defeat any elected official undertaking local Agenda 21. In other words, the conspiracy theorists. So, we will call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning, growth management, or smart growth. In other words, they had to lie to us. They had to call it, they had to rename it so that they could get it through. The main documents about Agenda 21, I've just shown you some of them, but the one that I think is absolutely scary, besides the Crook book, the Global Biodiversity Assessment, is the United Nations Earth Charter. The Earth Charter is a document, and it sounds really good, to save the environment and bring us all to be communal with nature. Who watched the Pope yesterday at the United Nations headquarters talking about agenda, the 2030 agenda? If you listen to his speech, you should be shocked, not surprised, but that so many people are following this Pope and think that he is a good man. He's either misguided or something very else. But the purpose for so what he said was, we all must be communal with nature. You'll hear that in his speech. The Earth Charter, you can see, and that's this book right here, is a framework for global governance, in their own words. When I was getting my master's in the Bay Area, I went to a private Catholic college, and when I came out of the school invites me back every once in a while. They actually, I'm surprised they invite me because they are a very radical left school now, or radical environment. They are Catholic and they believe in abortion, and anyway. So when I came out of teaching these students a similar presentation to this and talking about private property rights, I walked out of the classroom and a detail stood out to me. First thing I saw on this, and it was the Earth Charter, and then I looked at the rest of it. But Mary Evelyn Tucker, who is a Yale professor, she wrote a book called Worldviews and Ecology. She's actually done quite a bit. She was at my school, this little tiny private Catholic school, and you could see she was there to urge and endorse the community. Urge the community to endorse the United Nations Earth Charter. The United Nations Earth Charter is to replace the 10 Commandments.
Right.
The U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. And you know what? You're in Ickley State. So there's another part of Agenda 21, and I'm going to get into the Earth Charter, go back to the Earth Charter. But before I do that, this book that was sophomawed by George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992, the 28th chapter, which is all about how do you get Agenda 21 locally. It's Ickley, who is the non-government organization who was tasked with how do you get Agenda 21 to where it's a local movement around the world. You can see this map. This isn't Ickley. It's a Japanese. I had to go to a Japanese website to get the truth. But you can see that Montana is considered an Ickley state. When you sign an MOU, which you did to reduce your greenhouse gases because of global warming and climate change, which is why you're going to see, more condensed, high-density living, even in a very rural area like Montana. You sign on to the United Nations Earth Charter. And you can look at the Ickley Charter, and you can look at Chapter 1.7 principles. It says the association shall promote and ask its individual members to adopt the following Earth Charter principles. You have adopted a United Nations agenda to replace the Constitution. In the Global Biodiversity Assessment Report, all these things are considered unsustainable. Everything from ski runs to just a normal farm in the 21st century are all considered unsustainable. They say that in an agricultural world, a reasonable estimate for an industrialized world society at the present North American material standard of living would be 1 billion people. So in other words, we need to stabilize or depopulate the earth because the earth has way too many people for such a fragile, dying planet. So the National Governors Association were involved, and so are the Western governors. Last time I was here, I asked if anybody knew about the Crucial Habitat Assessment Tool. Did anybody look that up? This is the chat map. By the way, I talked to Steve Bullock. I went to their conference. I go to a lot of conferences because I want to hear straight from them what their agenda is. And so I'm not making up stuff. I'm getting it straight from them. But you can see that Montana is mostly dark blue, right? This shouldn't surprise you because the Y2Y, right, the Yellowstone to Yukon, look how dark blue that is. The dark blue is crucial. They're using this tool to where you can and cannot build. This is the way they're using this kind of tool to do land building and also transportation planning around habitat. This is a threat to private property. Can you see that? And I only have just a minute to go. And I want you to hear from a guy named Reed Noss. Reed Noss is quoted all throughout this book. He is and the reason I'm doing this is because, people who want to call us conspiracy theorists and tell other people that, oh, you're going to hear about Agenda 21 and they're going to say it's about a private property takeover. It is. How long before they send the blue hats in? Well, we already have blue hats. They're in New York. United Nations headquarters is in New York. So what this next video is, and you can see I've got, I think I have 85 slides. We're at number 43, so there you go. This next slide, this video, it's a 2013 video. And it's Reed Noss. Reed Noss came up with the concept of cores, corridors, and carnivores. Now you know why wolves are part of the agenda. So Reed Noss is going to tell you why land acquisition is so important.
As a grad student back in the 80s, I devised a conceptual framework for a statewide network of conservation areas across Florida. Now, the real map was very detailed. We didn't have GIS back then, okay? So it was a paper map, a wall map, 1 to 500,000 scale, on which I put overlays, okay, to draw these corridors and core areas and buffer zones and so on. So this is a very simplistic artist rendition of that network. Now, as you might imagine, this was perceived at the time as being somewhat radical. They actually appeared after a conference we had on the front pages of newspapers in the state. My advisor was about ready to fire me. Kicked me out of the university. But, curiously enough, within just a few years, state agencies and mainstream conservation groups like the Nature Conservancy and Florida Audubon Society were starting to kind of secretly refine my map, improve it, and use it to identify priorities for land acquisition.
To identify priorities in land acquisition.
And similarly, some other states now have developed similar networks, especially California, I think, provides a really good example.
For those, even in this room, who want to say, this is not about land acquisition, this is AB 2785. It's called the California Essential Habitat Connectivity Project, and it was fully funded by the Department of Transportation, Caltrans, and California, well, Fish and Wildlife is what we used to call them. They're now the Department of Fish and, or pardon me, they used to be the Fish and Game. Now they are called the Department of Fish and Wildlife, because this is not about game anymore. Their game, however, is about pushing a global agenda. Have I made that clear? Has that been clear today? That the tie to, yes, Larry?
I have to say that she is 100% correct. I've validated all of this in law through international treaties of the United Nations, through which member states, including the United States, have participated. This is not fiction. Debbie is right on the money. And we have more proof, even on the website that I carry, the Institute for Trade Standards and Sustainable Development, which is a free market, private property advocacy platform to wake Americans up as to what is occurring. She's on the money, and I think you need to listen to her very carefully.
Since Larry just stole like 15 minutes of me.
Nice try.
Can I do a few more slides? 5 minutes. Butch,
Can we ask the senator?
can I get an executive order from
We have
you?
the senator's
Only,
permission. She
only
needed
a
to change
tyrant
it.
would overrule
Oh,
this
okay.
group, and that's not me.
We have Senator Fielder.
Figueres
Sorry,
continued.
sorry,
This is
hold
the
on.
first time.
Sorry about that. So why I wanted to just ask for a little bit more time is because of the conference that's happening today. There are over 108 sustainable development goals. One of them is to put a policy on ending poverty. How do you put a policy on ending poverty?
You kill them all.
There's another one where by the year 2030, they want to have the number of traffic accidents. How do you think they're going to do that?
No cars.
Because under the 21st Agenda Plan, cars are considered unsustainable. You know that. Yes, Larry?
Product service systems. Product service systems, you've come across that, right?
I have, yes, that we're moving into a systems.
In other words, you don't need your own tractors. There's going to be a tractor rental company, and they're going to rent you the tractor so that you save on natural resources necessary to produce those tractors. And you don't make a carbon footprint. It's done with washing machines. They've got agricultural co-ops. They've got car sharing. They've got anything that would take away private property out of your home. This is an extension. I have it on the internet on my phone right now. It's called Product Service System, and it's on the UN website.
It's all about sharing,
Yeah.
is what this is about.
Communalism.
It's, yeah, and it's communitarianism, it's communal. This is why everything is common, our common future. They are telling us exactly what they're up to. By the way, in President Obama's State of the Union, he also said what they were up to. That we would lead the way internationally on climate change policies. He's talking about us. And so is the United Nations. This is what Christiana Figueres, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretary, I've met her many times. Her father, 3 times, was the president of Costa Rica. They went to Ivy League schools. She is going around saying that you, because we have a fragile planet, must reduce your consumption, must reduce your lifestyle. You must move into high-density regions because it's in the built world, because we need to protect and preserve the environment. This is what Christiana Figueres said about the United Nations economic system.
Figueres continued, "This is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution."
Whose 150 years is she talking about?
America.
It's us, people. It's us. We are the pilot program for a global agenda that would bring all of us into a one big, happy family, planet living situation. This is why the borders are not being protected, nor will they be protected. This is why it does not matter right now which president goes into office, because this plan is so far down the rabbit hole that the only way I envision that we don't go back to living where we are subjects. We fled that past, that future, and we created what is called the United States of America, based on over 700 years of tyrannical history. All these laws, the 1100 Charters of Liberties, every single one of these was kind of going back to the people. These are from tyrannical kings and kingdoms. The United States is not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and if you don't start telling people when they call us a democracy, shame on you. Because what's the difference between a democracy and a monarchy? How many people rule over you? That's it. Daniel Webster said, "Our destruction, should it come at all, will be from another quarter." He says it's not from a foreign foe. From the inattention of the people to the concerns of their government, from their carelessness and negligence, I must confess that I do apprehend some danger. I fear that they may place too implicit a confidence in their public servants. Haven't we been doing that?
Yeah.
Aren't we too afraid to stand up to them? Remember last time I was here, I said, they're going to come around, they're going to want your vote, they're going to want your money. You make them sit and wait and listen to you before you let them come to the front of the room and say, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to do that. No, they're not. They've proven they won't do that for us. I fear that they may place too implicit a confidence in their public servants and fail properly to scrutinize their conduct. That in this way they, you and me, may be made the dupes of designing men and become the instruments of their own undoing. Patrick Henry said, "I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know no way of judging the future but by the past." Right. What was he saying? Solomon said, nature does not change, humans do not change, history does not change. But imagine that in this area you join as a group, as a powerful group who love this country and know what we're giving up, even know what the Indians are giving up. And you stand together, whatever that's going to take, because from here forward you're going to be pitted against each other. You're going to be pitted against the Indians. Remember, we had that conversation. The public is going to scrutinize us for being cattle ranchers and farmers and landowners, as land barons. And you all know who you are in your heart and your soul. We've hit a time where you're given a choice. And I invite you to choose right now. I'm inviting you to choose right this very second what you're going to do. You know, a kite can make a difference. A kite string created was a Niagara bridge, suspension bridge, a Niagara Falls suspension bridge, just by simply a kite. If a kite string can do just something like that, build something so great, what kite string are you going to take forward today as your own expression of your love and your faithfulness and your commitment to a land that gives freedom and liberty for who? All. What What is your self-expression this day forward where you drew a line in the sand right now and you said, I'm going to stand? Because you see what we are giving up. You be that kite string and you see something greater. And you have no idea with that little kite string that you call your own, what kind of difference it's going to make for future generations. Thank you for having me here.